is circulating properly through the pressurized mating adapter, and there's no pockets of carbon dioxide, just a safety procedure. When he's going to inspect the hatch, he'll be wearing goggles and gloves for safety measures. We'll cover all of that post-docking, but that'll be Butch Wilmore's responsibility. We'll also be getting camera views from inside the station. These were set up by NASA astronaut Don Pettit. The crew waking up and making sure on an early day aboard the International Space Station, much earlier than their typical day. In fact, their crew wake period was just after midnight Greenwich Mean Time, which is the time that they operate aboard the International Space Station. They were up and making sure that everything was prepared for Crew 10's arrival today. Now we're making our way up the docking axis, beautiful views as Endurance makes its way above the horizon of the Earth. Again, it's making its way towards the docking axis. This is immediately in front of the International Space Station. Camera views from Dragon itself illuminating the solar arrays. You can see the original solar arrays of the International Space Station, as well as the IROSAs, the rollout solar arrays that are augmenting some of the station's power. This as part of a process to continue the science done aboard the International Space Station, which is, of course, the mission of the astronauts and cosmonaut aboard Crew 10. Crew 10 really just a transport mission to get to the International Space Station. Once there, they join Expedition 72 for at least a time. Don Pettit, NASA astronaut Don Pettit, will be returning aboard a Soyuz. Once that Soyuz undocks, crew on board the International Space Station officially begins Expedition 73, continuing the great science and technology demonstrations that are necessary in low Earth orbit to prepare for future human missions to deep space, including the Moon and to Mars.
Hey guys, let me see if I connect
Camera
it.
views
Hang
from
on.
inside Dragon Endurance showing displays that show some of the trajectory that is necessary to converge with the docking axis. This is waypoint 1. Now when you see those displays, you'll see the trajectory curve out, the spacecraft itself calculating breakout maneuvers that are necessary as it makes its way
Hey everybody,
along
I'm
the
just
planned
sharing with
set
you
of
this.
procedures.
The SpaceX rocket is about to dock with the International Space Station to rescue those
The docking axis will
astronauts that have been stuck there for
dragon
9 months, I think it is.
thrusters.
It was supposed to be 9 or 10 days, and it turned into almost 9 or 10 months. And I think this is freaking pretty awesome to watch this happen. Yeah, I think this is freaking pretty amazing if you ask me. I mean, they just left. What? Not even 2 days ago? Yesterday? Not
We're inside
yesterday.
6 minutes
I
from the
think it
planned
was Thursday
arrival of
night.
Waypoint 1, continuing to get these fantastic views provided from the International Space Station, as well as from inside Dragon itself. Commander Anne McClain, as well as pilot Nicole Ayers, you see positioned as the camera in between them, shows them in their launch and entry suits.
Yeah, I think there's four of them. I think
They bring up their visors
I think there's 2 American, 1 Russian, and 1 Chinese astronauts.
And they'll close their visors as part of the next dynamic phase, which will be the docking, which just as an added safety measure.
Good evening. I'm gonna go live later tonight again, but this is just a. I noticed I caught wind that they were
less than 300
the
meters from the
SpaceX rocket
International
was
Space
about to
Station,
meet up with
being
the
illuminated
International Space Station
by
and
an orbital sunset right now.
dock with
The
it,
views you
you know,
see
in an
of
effort
Earth and
to
of
rescue
Dragon will
these
start to get a little
this
darker
couple of
as we enter
astronauts that have been
into an orbital
stranded there
sunset and
for
orbital
9 months.
nighttime.
And I think
Dragon, now brightened by the sun, will start to dim, and you'll start to see the docking lights as well as
this is fucking, excuse my language. This is freaking fascinating. And not something you get to see, you know, every day.
green and red lights.
Sometimes not for years and years. So I didn't want to miss this one.
Position. Red indicating the port position. The International Space Station cameras sometimes view from an upside down position.
Oh, we live it like in a snow globe. Is that what we do? Is that where we live?
Is on the top left of your screen. So the port and starboard navigation light positions.
You know, I know that we kind of. I figured we were like on a petri dish, right? And the aliens were. We were an alien experiment. That's what I really think we are. So, not far from that.
But also a certain amount of protection from the Earth's atmosphere. As we are in low Earth orbit, 250 miles from the Earth is not terribly far. There's still a decent amount of protection, but there is a higher radiation environment. When we enter into an orbital nighttime, some of the cameras, you'll start to see some pixels, different colors on the camera. As we enter into an orbital nighttime, those pixels and different colors become a little bit more apparent. Those are from the radiation environment, the radiation damaging the pixels inside the cameras themselves.
Once again, welcome everybody. It's just something I find science and technology.
Inside 3 minutes from waypoint 1 arrival.
I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that don't like Elon Musk, and they didn't like him already. Now they like him less because of his involvement with this presidential administration. But I'm not one of those. I think dude is a genius. I mean, because of him, this is possible. You know, NASA couldn't go up there and get him for whatever the reason. So he said, "We'll go," and look at this. I mean, it's happening. All right, let me let this go.
Waypoint 2.
SpaceX, Dragon, copy all.
That relayed from the SpaceX core in Hawthorne, California, confirmed by the crew aboard Endurance. We are proceeding inside the keep-out sphere. You are seeing the docking light begin to blink at the center of Dragon Endurance. Features of Dragon becoming a little bit more apparent. The nose cone fully open, exposing the docking ring and the forward bulk of the Dracos. You did hear that Dragon will extend the soft docking ring mechanism. This allows for a cushioned contact as Dragon makes its way toward the international docking adapter. Docking comes in several phases, which includes contact and a soft capture, which is initiated by...
I swear, this is like watching a movie, like a space movie or something. This is, man, so cool.
To the International Space Station, and then begin a sequence to hard dock Dragon to the International Space Station. There are 12 hooks that are driven to really latch Dragon to the International Space Station. They're deployed in 2 sets of 6. and those will be confirmed by the crew once all of the hooks are driven. There is also an umbilical that extends and connects to an interface on the International Space Station side to provide power and data transfer between the two vehicles. Dragon right now operating on.
And did you know, depending on where this is happening up in space, I want to see if I can find it real quick. Well, it's got 19 minutes before they dock. But if this is overhead, we can actually see this happening. You can actually see, you can always see the space station when it's flying overhead. You just have to find the right time and date of when it orbits around, your particular area. I'm going to take a look right now. I'm going to look it up to see where it's at.
Docking axis and towards the keep out sphere. Now passing waypoint 1, Dragon Endurance heading towards the International Space Station. We're following along from here inside Mission Control Houston, working jointly with the teams in Hawthorne, California, to take us through the next series of steps, including crossing the keep out sphere and heading towards waypoint 2. Let's send it back over to Anna and Chris in Hawthorne.
And thanks, Gary. Yeah, so we have passed waypoint 1, so waypoint 2 is what is up next, and that will put Dragon only about 20 meters.
Station Houston on the big loop. Monitor approach per step 3 of 1.102, Dragon approach and retreat monitoring. Let us know when your review is complete and you are ready for docking.
You heard that.
Station copies on the big loop, step 3, and I can confirm that review is complete and we're ready for docking.
So that call there between the ISS flight control room and the crew on board the International Space Station.
Houston copies. At waypoint 2, Dragon will hold for approximately 5 minutes.
And you heard that call there indicating that the ISS
Thanks for the heads up.
and the crew there are now ready for Dragon's docking to the forward docking adapter of the Harmony module of the International Space Station. Dragon approaching waypoint 2, which is the point about 20 meters from the International Space Station's forward docking adapter. And as we did just hear there, we are expecting Dragon to hold for about 5 minutes once it reaches that point. It crossed through waypoint 1 and waypoint 0 without having to hold. But again, these waypoints or checkpoints are places we can hold if we need to, and if we don't, we can proceed forward through them.
And so we have gone through 2 of those waypoints, so waypoint 0 and 1, and so now Dragon is less than 200 meters away from the International Space Station, about 170 meters currently away from its target of that node 2 forward docking port. And there you're seeing a great view on your screen of the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as it makes its final approach to the International Space Station. The teams in Mission Control Houston the teams at the International Space, or not the International Space Station, the SpaceX Mission Control teams behind us are, of course, doing some final go, no-go polls for docking. It's one of the final checkpoints between those teams to make sure everyone is good to proceed and to dock. We did hear that there will likely be a brief hold at waypoint 2. And again, that waypoint 2 is just 20 meters away from the International Space Station, so very close at that point. So they will hold briefly, and then from there, we will have our final approach and docking. We will have an initial soft capture. We did hear that the soft capture ring was being extended a few minutes ago. And then from there, they will begin to deploy those hooks, 2 sets of 6 for a total of 12 hooks to get that hard capture. And during that final hold, that again, we're expecting around the waypoint 2 mark, which is 20 meters away from the space station. During that final hold, they can possibly wait for better lighting conditions. So the space station does have exterior lights and Dragon can dock in the dark. But of course, we go through an orbit every 90 minutes. So there's a sunrise and sunset every 45 minutes. So if they need to wait for a little bit of improvement in the lighting conditions, they can use that waypoint 2 hold opportunity to wait for things like that, ensure final alignment, ensure everyone is good to go for that final approach and docking.
And as we could see right there, right before we switch to the inside view there, that's a great view on the outside. You can see that we're passing into an orbital sunset here, so approaching orbital night. And you can see how that lighting is very different on board the
Well,
station.
everything I've seen,
From Dragon, illuminating
I mean,
forward element of
if we are square or flat, seriously, why hasn't anybody ever fallen off the edge and vanished and disappeared? Airplanes have literally flied around the globe from beginning to starting point and arriving back at the same point,
and the green light that you see is the starboard
going
navigation.
around.
So just helping the folks on the
And
space station keep track of Dragon's orientation there, and the red one that just came into view.
I don't know. I haven't. I proved to me that that this is a flat ass world. It's not. I don't think you can convince me of that. Unless you took me up on a rocket and showed me the edge and what happens to people falling off the edge, or boats, ships falling off the edge, or whatever. Explain that to me.
And we just heard confirmation that that soft capture ring extension has.
Yes, this is live.
So that extension of the soft
I don't believe this is
capture ring
CGI.
ready for
It's
that soft capture, that initial contact with the International Space Station. So
come
right
on.
now, the International Space Station and Dragon are currently flying.
Hey, and I like good conspiracies as well as much as the next guy.
The International Space Station currently just over 100 meters away, as it
But this isn't one of them.
that waypoint 2, which is 20 meters away, so a little over 80 meters to go to the international, or to that waypoint 2, and then that final initial capture, and then we'll have the hooks deploy and have that hard capture milestone.
Now, as you're looking there at the SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California, where we are, Dragon up on orbit as it is approaching waypoint 2 on that docking axis for the forward docking adapter. It's approaching the station very, very slowly, about a few tenths of a meter per second, and it's also trying to keep in proper alignment with that docking port. But again, waypoint 2 is where we're going to stop based on the calls, and we can do some final alignments there and final checkouts. But so far so good for Dragon. About 28 hours after liftoff now, after lifting off from the Kennedy Space Center yesterday afternoon at 7:03 p.m., completing the docking in just a few minutes from now.
And so Dragon is now less than 100 meters away from the International Space Station as it continues to make that final approach. And so right now we're seeing those live views of the SpaceX Mission Control team here in Hawthorne, California. And typically we'll go back to these views when we do have those brief loss of signal between the International Space Station and Dragon and the ground. And we'll regain those views shortly. It's just a handover between satellites. So that tracking and data relay satellite system that the International Space Station relies on, they have a brief handover period between satellites, which causes a loss of those views periodically throughout our coverage.
Kind of like going from cell phone tower to cell phone tower.
And so Dragon is less than 80 meters away, so continuing to approach waypoint 2, about 60 meters to go until it reaches waypoint 2. Again, we are expecting Dragon to hold at waypoint 2 for just a few minutes to ensure final alignment, to ensure lighting conditions are good before we have that final docking. We are expecting that docking to take place around 9 a.m. Pacific, a little bit later than that. And right before that final docking takes place, we will hear that call for CHOP that we mentioned previously, which is the crew hands-off point. So right after you hear that call is typically when that soft capture takes place.
And that CHOP call that we've been talking about, and basically what that means is the crew can no longer manually abort Dragon away from the International Space Station if there should be a reason to do so. It would all be based on Dragon's automation at that point. Everything going very well for Dragon as it continues to approach the space station. The crew monitoring the automated approach for the vehicle, as well as any escape options they might have to do. But again, not expecting to have to use those.
Station Houston, on the big loop, the no exercise constraint for docking begins now.
Station copies.
And so you did just hear a call up from the Capcom or capsule communicator at Mission Control in Houston to the crew on the International Space Station, mentioning that the exercise constraint has started. So typically when you have visiting vehicles such as Dragon arriving and departing the International Space Station, there are constraints on crew exercise, and that's basically to prevent additional loads from being imparted on the station during
it's just a few more minutes.
And I love this sort of night vision-esque view here from Dragon looking at the International Space Station. So this is a view from the Dragon Endurance carrying the Crew 10 crew.
I believe
there is in the center of your screen, sort of being illuminated every few
I
seconds.
believe from Dragon. The space station is over. It's the northern part of the U.S. It might be over Canada right now. I believe it's almost central Canada.
And then,
oh, nope, there it is. Right now it's going over New York. Commander Ann McLean on the left-hand over way north, Maine maybe. Next to Nicole, if you're up on the East Coast, way up there northeast, you can probably look up and see it if you have clear skies. Astronaut Takuya Onishi. Ann and Takuya are returning to the International Space Station for their second long-duration missions, and Nicole and Kirill are on their first missions to space.
So it's getting pretty real for the 4 crew members that make up Crew 10. Right now, they are just under 25 meters. This launched on Thursday,
I want to say Thursday evening, and they're just barely arriving there. They're supposed to dock sometime within the next 8 or 9 minutes or so. But they have just arrived to the area, to the scene.
Crew 10 visors are closed.
We did just hear that confirmation that the crew is approaching waypoint 2, so they see that on those screens in front of them. They see the distance, and they're able to monitor that approach as well.
And this is great because you can see Dragon's Draco thrusters firing here. You've got the red and the green navigation lights as well as the white one. But
yeah, well, they were supposed to be home, but something happened with the rescue
that alignment,
or their vessel that they come home on. Something malfunctioned with that, and that just messed everything up. So then there was a scramble to, well, now we got to send something up to go get them. And finally, I think Elon Musk stepped up and said, we can do it. And
so Dragon is actually at that
here we are
mark now, just around 20 meters away. So we will have that hold briefly. And recently, the team in Mission Control Houston did conduct their final go, no-go pull as well for docking.
SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon is holding at waypoint 2 for Dragon eye assessment.
You hear that confirmation?
Dragon, copy.
And you hear that confirmation that Dragon is holding. Now you're on the left-hand side of your screen as you're looking from the ISS's camera out at Dragon. Even though we've said Dragon is holding, you're still going to see some of those thruster pulses because holding in space is not like just stopping your car that holds the same position.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is bold to go, and we'll be enabling approach shortly. Confirm crew readiness for final approach.
SpaceX Dragon, Crew 10 is ready for final approach.
And that is great words there to hear from SpaceX Mission Control.
Resume has been commanded. Reminder, once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Copy.
And Anna, here we go.
So we did just hear that they have the go to resume final approach, so that we had that brief hold completed at waypoint 2, which was just 20 meters away from the International Space Station. So Dragon will now resume its final approach.
I know these things look like they're just floating in slow motion, but these things are flying at 17,000, over 17,000 miles per hour, both of them. You know, up there is no wind resistance. There's no resistance or gravity up there.
On the big loop, Dragon is on final approach and is go.
So just keep that in mind while you're looking at this.
In 1.102, Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copy.
And that was the call from the International Space Station Flight Control Room to the crew on the ISS. Again, just everyone confirming, making sure everyone's on the same page as Dragon is now very close to docking with the International Space Station here today.
And so Dragon is now just 17 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in on its target. Coming up here shortly, we will likely hear that call out for CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. That typically takes place less than 30 seconds before docking. So as soon as you hear that, you know that that docking will take place very soon after. And then at that point, when we hear the CHOP call out, any aborts will have to be done automatically by Dragon. And so also on the International Space Station, we have NASA astronaut Nick Hague monitoring this final approach. And then once Dragon is docked, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore will walk through those hatch preparation and opening steps to welcome the crew on board. And Dragon is now less than 14 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing that final approach.
These very delicate series of maneuvers now. Dragon approaching very, very slowly relative to the International Space Station. Again, we talked earlier that launch is all about accelerating the vehicles to orbital velocity, and even though both Dragon and the ISS are traveling at about 17,500 miles per hour or 27,500 kilometers per hour, they are moving very, very slow, like 1/10 of a meter per second in relation to each other right now.
Dragon now at about 10 meters away from the International Space Station. We're standing by for that call out for CHOP here shortly.
SpaceX Dragon, 10 meters.
Copy, 10.
And again, you're looking at the forward docking port of the International Space Station, which is mounted to the Harmony or Node 2 module of the space station. The Crew 9 Dragon, which has been there since September, is also attached to a docking port on this module. And that
So it's closing in on 9 yards.
Crew 10's Dragon comes in for docking in just a few moments.
If I have that right.
And I love these views again. You've got the Dragon, you've got the ISS staring at Dragon on the left-hand side of your screen, and you've got Dragon looking at its docking port on the ISS on the right.
And Dragon is now less than 7 meters away from the International Space Station as it continues to make that final approach. Traveling with a range rate of less than 0.082, which, as you mentioned earlier, it continues to get slower and slower as we make this final approach.
So 1 meter is almost
5 meters.
just over a yard, so 3 feet, just over 3
Next call we
feet.
should hear is CHOP, or that crew hands-off period, followed moments later by docking.
That typically comes at about 2 meters away from the International Space Station. Right now, we're less than 4 meters away.
There we go. Okay.
Less than 3 meters away.
2 meters. Clear hands off.
Copy, hands off.
There is the CHOP call.
Standing by for initial contact of Dragon to the International Space Station.
Dragon contact and soft capture complete.
And there you heard Dragon has successfully docked to the International Space Station. We have contact and soft capture confirmed. Soft capture meaning that the initial soft capture ring around Dragon has physically connected with the International Docking Adapter.
Freaking amazing.
Part of the overall docking sequence, Anna.
And so we did have that contact confirmed at 9:04 p.m. Pacific, 11:04 p.m. Central, while both Dragon and the International Space Station were flying 260 statute miles.
Capture ring retraction in progress.
Flying 260 statute miles over the Atlantic Ocean, and we did just hear confirmation that that soft capture ring is now beginning to retract. So they're beginning those steps to firmly attach Dragon to the International Space Station so that we can have what is known as a hard capture.
And again, as we mentioned earlier, like all the timings of these events are a little nebulous and they can change around by a couple of minutes here. So while we were expecting completion of we're expecting the completion of soft capture ring retraction, which we heard was already underway in just a few minutes. That will be followed by the start of the hard capture sequence, which is a series of 12 hooks that are separated into 2 batches of 6 that drive between Dragon and the International Space Station to really hard connect them together. And then
Cindy, yes, very humbling, man, for this kind of stuff.
come into place at that point.
I mean, the kind of things you only see in movies.
The Harmony module of the ISS. Once those soft capture
And I
systems
think
are tracked, the spacecraft will getting closer for the hard
the
capture.
American people are
And then once those, and that's about a 15
lucky
process.
to have somebody like Elon Musk who, I mean, at this point, he doesn't even, luckily, he doesn't have to care about the money. He can just do this stuff, and he wants to rescue these people, and he wants for the planet to succeed. And I remember at some point they were discussing this, and at some point Elon Musk rose up and said, "I'll do it. I'll go up." Yeah, the Biden administration, I don't know. I think it was initiated back then, and it took a while to set up. But I can't remember. I don't know. The Biden admin didn't seem very, I don't know. I'm sure they were, but they didn't seem very concerned. It's going to be so cool right here.
The station hatch that will have to be opened before you can get to the Dragon hatch and bring the crew on board. And they will be welcomed by the Expedition 72 crew. And they will have a brief welcoming ceremony, and then they will go into a safety briefing and get up to speed and adjust to life on station. Again, completing that handover period with the Crew 9 crew before Crew 9 returns home.
And then they get to work, because as exciting as the last 28 hours have been from launch until docking, this is just the beginning of a multi-month mission for Crew 10. They're joining the Expedition 72 crew, which has been ongoing for the last few months aboard the International Space Station. And about a month from now, when a Soyuz crew rotation from Russia completes, that will actually mark the start of Expedition 73, which our Crew 10 crew will be joining. And of course, there are about 200 science experiments that the crew will be performing over the course of their multi-month mission up there. And I can't wait to see it and everything that they're going to be able to do up there.
So they will be contributing to about 200 different experiments and technology demonstrations from human research. They're doing some flammability studies.
Michael, amen.
Sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
And we did just hear confirmation that the soft capture ring has been fully retracted. So again, that soft
what I want to know is how long is the arriving crew going to take to get settled, to brief them, and then when do they go back and then start to head back home? That's what I want to know.
They are going to hold that docking's hard capture sequence a little bit to make some final configurations. We do expect that full hard capture process to take about 15 minutes, so we have about 10 or so more minutes to go there. The next step in that process will be to begin to deploy those hooks. Again, there are 12 total hooks that have to fully engage and really bring Dragon in for a nice hard seal to the International Space Station's forward docking port.
All right, so we got a few minutes. So
with spaceflight, docking is not just a singular instant.
One thing that's been brought up is the condition. I know right now in space they're okay, but I know that the body takes on a lot of abuse coming back to Earth, because now up there's no gravity. They've been virtually weightless for 9 months. So usually a few days or a couple of weeks, whatever it is, they come back, and there's an adjustment period, and there is damage to the body that can happen. And I wonder, 9 months up there, I wonder if they're going to be able to walk. They say that as soon as you come back, you feel like you weigh 1,000 pounds. It's hard to move your legs and stuff. I can only imagine after 9 months of weightlessness what that might I'm just curious how they're going to be.
Waiting for there and holding the docking sequence has been, we've gotten through that, and now we are going to begin that hard capture sequence, and that's what you were talking about, Anna, driving the series of 12 hooks, 6 at a time, to form that hard capture. And again, we expect that process to take about 15 minutes, but it really is great to see the Dragon Endurance back on the space station. Its 4th trip to space. This particular capsule has launched the Crew 3, Crew 5, and Crew 7 missions, and of course returned those astronauts safely to Earth. And now it's doing it again for the 4th time for the Crew 10.
And it's the 10th total rotational mission for SpaceX flying crew to the International Space Station. Again, we did hear confirmation that the first set of 6 hooks for a total of 12 is now driving. So those will make a hard capture, and then they will drive the second set of 6 hooks. And then from there, we will have confirmation of that hard capture, and then they will deploy some umbilicals and then begin that pressurization and leak check series before we have hatch opening and welcoming Crew 10 on board the International Space Station. Of course, it's been a pretty long journey for Crew 10. They've been traveling for over 28 hours now, following a liftoff yesterday of 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Launch Complex 39A. They had approximately 9-minute ride to orbit before we had that orbital insertion and second engine cutoff, and then they've been traveling in free flight since then. They had a series of burns that set them up for a docking today at 9:04 p.m. Pacific. They first had their phase burn, and that was completed yesterday at 4:52 p.m. Pacific, followed by a boost burn at 12:08 p.m. Pacific, a close burn a little bit after that at 12:50 p.m. And then they had a mid-course out of plane burn, a transfer burn, co-elliptic burn, and just recently we had that approach initiation burn. So a lot of burns to set them up and get them on a track to where they are now at the International Space Station.
And after that sequence of burns, it went pretty good after that point. We saw Dragon cruise through the waypoint 1 and waypoint 0 targets of 400 and 220 meters respectively from the International Space Station, and then close into that waypoint 2 where a brief hold, and then right on in for a picture-perfect docking over the North Atlantic.
And so we did have that soft capture at 9:04. Now the first set of 6 hooks has fully closed, and now the second set of 6 hooks is driving. Once that second and final set of hooks finishes closing and driving, we will have that hard capture complete. And then from there, they will, of course, begin the pressurization process of the vestibule.
And of course, part of Crew 10's arrival at the space station means that it's time for another crew who's been up there for a few months to come on home. So a few days after Crew 10, now the Crew 10 has docked, in a few days we will have the planned undocking and return of Crew 9, which includes NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Butch Wilmore, and Sunita Williams, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. 2 of them have been up there since September. Nick and Alexander launched on Crew 9 in September on the Crew 9 mission from Slick 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And of course, Butch and Sunny were already on the space station and joined Crew 9 and will now be coming home on Dragon.
So they will do that brief handover period. The handover period between crews is pretty typical. We like to ensure a continuous presence of U.S. crew, and then the Crew 9 will help bring Crew 10 up to speed as the new arrivals and get them adjusted to space station life before they return home. And so that second set of 6 hooks continues to drive. We had that initial docking about 10 minutes ago at 9:04 p.m. Pacific, and typically it takes about 15 minutes to have hard capture complete, so we should be approaching that milestone here shortly.
And as all of that is happening and those umbilicals are being connected,
hard capture complete.
And there we heard confirmation that we do have hard capture, so all 12 hooks have finished driving. And then from there, the umbilicals will start to deploy, and that again brings that hardline data and power from the International Space Station to Dragon. And then the pressurization of the vestibule will begin. And again, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore on the International Space Station side is on tap to be to help with those hatch opening operations today. Again, we are expecting hatch opening about an hour and a half or so after or from now, and then from there will be a welcoming combined with the farewell remarks of Crew 10. Since that handover is pretty short. And then from there, they will adjust to station life. There will be a safety briefing, and then they'll get right into it as Expedition 72 members for the next month before they become Expedition 73.
And and you can see that's Sunny Williams there in front of the hatch on the International Space Station side. So we did hear confirmation of hard capture is complete. The docking sequence still proceeding, though, with Dragon. You mentioned those umbilicals that are now being driven between the vehicles to establish good power and data connections between the International Space Station and Dragon. Now, we've talked a little bit about what the folks on the ISS side are doing here, getting those hatches ready. And inside Dragon, they're continuing to monitor the docking sequence as it progresses, and then they'll also be able to get out of their suits as well that they have been in for the last couple of hours as Dragon has approached the International Space Station.
So as Dragon crew gets out of their suits, of course, as we mentioned previously, NASA's astronaut Butch Wilmore is going to start those hatch opening operations. And there on your screen, you are seeing NASA astronaut Nick Hague, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Ovchinin, as they stand by to greet Crew 10 members and welcome them as part of the International Space Station crew. Again, they are going to get that pressurization process underway here shortly, and they will pressurize that area known as the vestibule, which is the area between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch that was previously exposed to the vacuum of space. And then once that happens, they will conduct a series of leak checks. And there on your screen, you just saw NASA astronaut Sunny Williams actually floating right in front of that hatch that will be open in just a little bit.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. Docking sequence complete. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. Crew 10, welcome aboard the International Space Station.
SpaceX, Houston, and ISS, this is Dragon Mission Specialist Takuya Onishi on the big loop. We copy the docking sequence is complete. We are go for 4.012 for docking suits. And on behalf of the entire crew, I would like to thank all the partners, especially our SpaceX friends who trained us and enabled us to safely arrive at the International Space Station. It was so amazing to see the ISS shining in the darkness of space and symbolizing human beings, technology, and international cooperation. And it's such a great honor for us to be part of this program. We have a lot of exciting work ahead of us that we are looking forward to. Again, thank you very much to everybody who helps us to get here.
And there you just heard some really nice words between
You guys see a
10,
guitar case?
as they
I see
now
a guitar
arrived at
case
the
on the
International
left
Space
there,
Station. We
just
do have
next
that
to the hatch. Do you see
confirmation of
it?
hard capture complete.
Unless it's some other kind of
Again,
case.
Those words were coming from JAXA or Japan.
But I swear to,
Exploration Agency
I
astronaut
swear
Takuya Onishi,
that's a
who
guitar
will serve
case
as
right
one of
there.
the mission specialists for Crew 10. And so now with Dragon successfully and safely docked,
Kind of a random object to see when you're looking at it.
Crew 10, we look forward to your work and the spirit of cooperation with which you've arrived.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
And there's some words from the capsule communicator, Capcom in Houston, in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Back to Crew 10, and again, now with Dragon docked, that's going to wrap us up for our coverage here in Hawthorne, but our coverage for Crew 10 won't stop there.
That's correct. It's great to see the Dragon Endurance docked back at the station and see Crew 10 ready to begin their multi-month mission in there. In a minute, we're going to toss it back to Gary in Mission Control Houston to take us through the vestibule depressurization hatch opening, and then we'll see NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, along with JAXA or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov float into the International Space Station. But first, let's do a quick recap of how we got here. The crew suited up yesterday before their launch and then had their ride to the pads in those sleek-looking Teslas before ingressing an even sleeker-looking Dragon. They lifted off right on time from the Kennedy Space Center at Pad 39A at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, March 14th. Stage 1 successfully returned to a landing at Landing Zone 1 for recovery and reuse a few minutes later.
Thank you all for being
Dragon
here.
separated
I didn't
from
want
the
to miss
second
this.
stage of Falcon 9
And it's not over yet. I know it's going to be
deployed its nose cone to reveal that docking adapter. And
she said about 90 minutes before they actually open the hatch and then get to meet each other in person. So I think I'm just going to leave it right here. I don't want to miss that.
4 p.m. Central Time today, March 15th, 2025. And it was Dragon's 10th crew rotation mission for NASA and the Commercial Crew Program.
That's right. And now that Crew 10 has arrived to the International Space Station, we are looking ahead to the return of Crew 9. And we will be taking you along as they return home after their long duration stay on board the International Space Station. Teams will be assessing return dates, which will then be announced on nasa.gov. So be sure to tune in as NASA and SpaceX will then bring you live coverage every step of their return home. And you can also follow SpaceX and NASA on social media for real-time updates. But thank you again for watching our coverage of docking, and go NASA, go SpaceX, and go to Crew 10 and Crew 9. For those of you watching on X, please head over to NASA Plus to follow the coverage of hatch opening and welcoming live.
So thanks everyone for joining us here in Hawthorne.
Oh, they're going to disconnect. Okay, so now I got to find NASA Plus. All right, well, I'm going to do that offline. So when they end this, I will also end the stream, find the right link, and then come back with that as well. Plus, I want to go fix me a beverage.
And thank you, everyone, again for tuning in. We'll now go ahead and pass it over to NASA's Gary Jordan at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, who will continue sharing the mission of hatch opening and welcoming as the crew prepares to board their home for the next few months, the International Space Station.
Hang on, I might stay after all. Let's see what happens here. What are they going to do?
Talk SpaceX on the big loop. We've got you loud and clear for the cabin mic comm check.
Okay, if they're staying here, I'm just going to stay here.
Okay, we have you loud and clear.
Hey, Ambassador, I don't believe that. I choose to believe what I'm seeing right now with all these people there. And the fact that you can look outside, depending on where you are on this planet, and look up and see the space station flying around. And if it turns out it was a lie, by the time that comes out, I'm sure I'll be dead and buried. But in my heart, I believe this is all real. This is not an act. So, good luck in trying to convince people here that this is all an act.
p.m. Pacific. The International Space Station and Dragon were flying 260 statute miles over the Atlantic Ocean at the time of docking. Now that the docking sequence is complete, which means the ring is fully retracted, hooks are driven, and the umbilical is extended.
When I can see the rocket from my house launch and go up, when I can see and feel that, especially, I know that's real. There's nothing fake about it. When the rocket booster can come back and land and get captured by that tower, and people are there closer than I am. I'm about 27 miles away, 30 miles away at the most. And there's people that are a lot closer, and they can see that with their own eyes. That's not CGI, that's real. So,
a little less than an hour and a half from now. The projected time is 12:45 a.m. Central Time on March 16th. However, this is a variable time. It is the expected time that the Dragon hatch will open. Shortly after, we are planning a welcome ceremony.
Okay, so
well
about an
as
hour and
farewell
20
ceremony,
minutes.
Given a shorter duration handover.
So give or take an hour and 20 minutes.
For the crew aboard the International Space Station before Crew 9 undocks. We will say hello to the Crew 10 astronauts and cosmonaut aboard the International Space Station, welcomed by Expedition 72, while Crew 9 says farewell ahead of their next few days of getting their SpaceX Dragon spacecraft configured for undock and return to splash down off the coast of Florida. Right now you're looking at Dragon Endurance docked to the forward port of the International Space Station. Crew 9 Dragon docked to the Zenith port. These views provided by an external camera on the exposed facility outside of the Japanese module. Right now we are in an orbital sunrise, so we are seeing Dragon being illuminated by the sun as we cross the Terminator line.
So right now the ISS is
of South Africa now.
Yeah, it's at the southern tip of South Africa.
Right above that coast. In fact, on a southeast trajectory, heading into an orbital daytime, starting to see the horizon of Earth being illuminated by this view.
I'm going to put the link in the comments.
We're again following the procedures inside the International Space Station. We've been hearing the voice of NASA astronaut Nick Hague, whose responsibility for the past few hours has been the monitoring task of Crew 10's arrival to the International Space Station, receiving data via a common communications for visiting vehicles link between the International Space Station.
Yeah, Ambassador, it does that because those are test flights. Those are test flights. Those are test launches. And they blow up and lose track of them and all that for that reason. And they know that could happen. Those particular rockets are there's still plenty more tests to go. If I'm not mistaken, there's about another 20 that still have to happen before they are foolproof. And there is a trajectory, so it's not just go straight up like a cartoon. You're not just going straight up. There's a whole method to get into an orbit, and certain dates and certain times where you can get into an orbit. For example, when you want to go to Mars, it could take a couple of years to go to Mars. And if you launch at the wrong time, it could take up to 3 years to go to Mars. If you launch at just the right time at a certain where all these planetary alignments are just right, that's when it could take around 2 years, and that's the quickest path. So they're not going to be, I don't think they're going to be launching rockets to Mars. To Mars. They're not going to launch like an airline, every 30 minutes they're going to fly up there. It's going to happen every few months.
Okay, sorry. Equalization valve APAS was open at 0426, close to 042730.
You beat us to it. We were going to give you that call when you were drying your suits, but in section 5 of 4.400, we're going to have you guys wave every step but the last one. How copy?
That's your last call cut out. Say again for your host.
And repeating my last, but for that call in section 5 of 4.400, we are not going to have you perform any steps except for the last one. How copy?
That's Dragon, your call keeps cutting out after about a sentence.
Thank you, Barbara. Something on Facebook is messed up with the monetizing and the stars thing. I've been trying to reach Facebook tech support, which is freaking impossible, difficult to do. And I do it for a couple days every few weeks, and then I get tired of trying to reach somebody, and I'll probably hit that again maybe this week and see if I can contact someone. But I appreciate you. Thank you.
Dragon on Dragon to ground.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, with Dragon to ground being in and out, we can report here that there's no need to perform Section 5 of 4.400. How copy?
That's funny, Cindy. Are we there yet? I know, right after 28 hours.
Dragon, copy on the big loop. We can skip Section 5 of 4.400.
That's a good readback.
This is Mission Control Houston following along through the procedures. Crew 10 working through the steps inside Dragon Endurance, a view from which you are seeing the outside of the spacecraft from a camera mounted on the exposed facility of the Japanese module. Inside, the crew are working through steps. They wore their SpaceX launch and entry suits through the duration of today's procedure, docking to the International Space Station as a safety precaution, closing those visors and having the suits as an extra layer of protection. Now that we are docked and hard docked to the International Space Station, that docking sequence complete, the crew may doff or take off their suits and start configuring the cabin of Dragon for opening up the hatch. You'll hear some of those communications through Dragon to ground, those communications intended for the Dragon crew. Some of the communications you'll hear on the big loop and the space to ground loops, because there are crews on both sides of that hatch working to welcome the crew aboard. Each has their own respective role. Again, while the Endurance crew works to doff their suits and configure the Dragon cabin, International Space Station flight engineers working to open up the hatches and welcome the crew aboard. Confirm that the Node 2 forward hatch is already opened inside of Node 2. Next will be the APAS hatch. The APAS hatch is the last hatch on the International Space Station side. There is a vestibule that separates that hatch from the Dragon hatch, and that vestibule right now is at vacuum. Part of the procedures that the crew will undergo, namely NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore, will be to turn a valve and introduce air into that vestibule, bringing it up to pressure. Pressure inside the International Space Station and Dragon is that of sea level, 14.7 psi. The procedure to take that vestibule up to vacuum is slow and steady. They make sure that there are no leaks at about 5 pounds per square inch, settling there, making sure that there are no leaks present before bringing it fully up to pressure at 14.7 psi.
Thank you for the Cash App, Barbara. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know.
Part of the docking sequence is to extend an umbilical from Dragon to the International Space Station. That provides.
I mean, I know that
drawn from the
not
station
everyone
to
is
Dragon,
gonna
so Dragon no
agree
longer has to rely on
and
battery power.
believe what's
The
happening.
solar arrays that you can see, the black section at the trunk from this view.
I just don't know how it affects your life to not want to believe it.
From the International Space Station into Dragon,
you know what I mean? It's like
no longer needing to rely on battery power.
In my lifetime, especially the last decade, maybe even couple, there is more reason and evidence to believe all this stuff is happening. Not that this is done in some Hollywood studio somewhere. I mean, Elon Musk is a real person who's accomplished a whole lot in spite of, or maybe because of having, Asperger's. Yes, he is on the spectrum, a real person on the spectrum, and look at what he can accomplish. And I know he's awkward to listen to sometimes, but it's been said people with Asperger's are sometimes very awkward, and whether it be their speech, their physical attributes, their hand gestures, facial gestures, and I mean, people with autism are just different. And for me, I don't see anything. Nothing tells me any of this stuff is fake. Maybe when you see these guys, these couple of astronauts, when they finally get home after being, up for 9 or 10 months, maybe then people will believe it. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm lucky enough where I live right nearby, SpaceX at Boca Chica Beach here in Brownsville. And I can drive there any day of the week that I like and drive up. They virtually let you drive up to these rockets that are, I forgot how many stories tall. And it's an awesome sight. I mean, to look up and see these ginormous rockets there and the things that they're doing there. And it's just, and then the launch. I know the launch was real because the very first one they tested, I want to say 3 launches ago, shook the house. It shook houses up to 40 miles away. It vibrated, shook windows. People thought their windows were going to break. And then you can see it go. All you had to do was go out your front door or back door, depending on where you live, and you can see the rocket going up. And that's just fascinating. To me, yeah, that's real. You can't change my mind. And don't bother trying. Not necessary. So it looks like they're not going to have some communications here for a while because there's not much to whatever they got going on. Oh, okay, so part of the hatch opened up, right? So I'm going to go and refill my drink. I will leave this right here. If it's quiet, it's because they are not saying anything. Since the estimated time is about another hour before they actually open and, do the handshake thing, might not be a bad time to take a pee break, intermission, go get a snack. Probably a good time for that right now. I'll be right back. Cindy Young, thank you. real quick before I go to get my beverage. There are places in the equator where you can go and drop a coin, and the coin goes around and around and around. And right at the equator, depending on what side of the equator you're on, the toilet bowl flushes in a different direction. Not the usual way you see it. I mean, go to your bathroom and flush. When you're on the other side of the equator, it flushes the other way. If I'm not mistaken, that's what I remember seeing. Now, why would that even happen at all if we weren't round and there was a gravitational pull and there was a
This is Mission Control Houston, still getting views,
of the
though they will be interrupted. You see here from aboard the International Space Station, we're anticipating some very short handovers
Be right back.
in communication and views from the International Space Station. It's the teams here you see in Mission Control Houston that are walking through the operations and working with the teams aboard the International Space Station, as well as the flight control teams in Hawthorne, California, and the crew aboard Crew 10 to prepare for the crew's arrival. It'll be this team that witnesses the welcome of Crew 10 aboard the International Space Station when hatches open and the crew floats aboard. Right now we're expecting hatches to open at approximately 12:45 a.m. Central Time. This is an estimated time based on the docking time from this evening. Again, that was 11:04 p.m. So based on the procedures that the team has ahead of them, this is the estimated hatch opening time. We will remain on air and continue our coverage of the hatch opening procedures and welcome ceremony aboard the International Space Station. As a reminder, when we do the welcome ceremony, it will be a unique event in that it will be both a welcome for Crew 10 and the 4 astronauts and cosmonaut aboard, and a farewell to Crew 9. This is due to a shortened period between the arriving spacecraft and the departing spacecraft, and the series of procedures that the astronauts need to undergo to prepare for departure.
And Houston, I'm showing 15 minutes.
Butch, we copy. We are still assessing.
Standing by.
Tess Caswell is the Capcom here in the room today. In the blue blazer, Allison Bollinger. Caswell will be the voice from Mission Control Houston, relaying namely to the crew aboard the International Space Station. Through these hatch opening procedures, it's Caswell's responsibility to communicate with the crew inside station. This includes NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore, tasked with the hatch opening procedures, as well as Nick Hague, who is in the monitoring role during Crew 10's arrival and docking, or approach and docking to the International Space Station. It'll be the voice of the SpaceX core, who we will continue to pull into our broadcast. That'll be communicating with the Crew 10 astronauts and cosmonaut aboard Endurance, walking them through their procedures. We already heard them talking specifics about procedures needed for suit doffing. This means taking off their launch and entry suits that are necessary for the critical phase that is contact and capture of Dragon to the International Space Station. Once they go through that dynamic phase, they are taking off their suits and putting on something a little bit more comfortable They will not be in their SpaceX launch and entry suits when they enter the hatch and are welcomed by the crew. Caswell will be the voice here in Mission Control Houston that walks the crew through the welcome ceremony. Again, that will be the formal greeting. We'll see all 11 crew members aboard Expedition 72 in Node 2 of the station. This is at the very forward end, and it is the forward hatch that will be opened and is opened currently, the Node 2 forward hatch, and where Dragon Endurance is currently docked, the forward end of the space station. It is the teams here that are walking the astronauts through the procedures to open up those hatches.
Yeah, right, I'm
Views are
back here.
expected to be regained from space momentarily.
Gravity is a myth?
Butch Wilmore
Really?
is tasked with the responsibility of the hatch opening procedures. You can see the Node 2 forward hatch. Now that we have views again, the white.
Bro, I know you're trying hard, but you ain't gonna convince me. I mean, if somebody else in the chat is interested, hey, you know, whatever floats your boat. But if it's not gravity, then what do you call it?
Station Houston on the big loop.
An item falls to the
Expect
ground due to its
approximately
density.
10 more minutes before we're ready to press.
But it's not density that pulls it down. It's gravity that pulls it down. If we had no gravity, nothing would fall. We would all be floating around like they are on the screen right now.
Which is on the other side of the hatch, just right there, has been exposed to vacuum and the harsh conditions.
You know what? Whatever. I ain't gonna argue with you.
Being exposed to
think what you want, and I'll think what I want.
Plus 200 degrees Fahrenheit and minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit in sun and shade, respectively.
Minus 200 degrees. Holy crap, it's cold.
Significant thermal constraints and thermal conditions in that vestibule. Now, when Dragon docks, that vestibule is at vacuum, and the task here is to bring. You can sort of see the black structure on the right of your screen there. That's the pressurized mating adapter. Of course, Dragon, you can see that there. But the white in the middle, that's the international docking adapter. That is that vestibule. It is that section there that needs to be pressurized up to 14.7 pounds per square inch. What the teams here are relaying is that those thermal conditions need to dampen out. If they were to pressurize now, there would be too much fluctuation to accurately read if there is indeed a leak. Could it be a leak, or could it be the thermal fluctuations from the intense environment that was in that vestibule?
So right now the space station is off the southern coast of Australia, about to go over. Well, it's about to go over Australia, right in the middle. Going in a northwardly direction. So I'm looking at a map on the screen. I put that link up in the comments a little bit ago. So it's moving, you know, left to right. And it's going, I guess, northeast-ish.
We're taking a pause from our commentary here. Flight Director Allison Bollinger is addressing the teams for some of the upcoming procedures.
Oh boy, we have another one.
Today, we're just listening in.
Midday 4 p.m. Yeah, right now it's going over.
Dragon on the big loop in Dragon procedure 4.0.
It's moving. It's about to hit the southern coast of Australia. About to go over you guys.
Copy. We're with you for suit drying. Dragon, at this time, you have a go for sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Good readback.
That's where it's at right now.
As we get live views from here in Mission Control Houston, the calls you heard were of Commander Ann McLean inside Dragon Endurance, speaking with the core, the equivalent Capcom role over at Mission Control, the SpaceX's Mission Control over in Hawthorne, California. You heard that they completed their suit doffing and are now drying their suits, setting them aside, going through the next steps of procedures. Meanwhile, inside the International Space Station, the crew is preparing, the Expedition 72 crew is preparing for Crew 10's arrival. An excited NASA astronaut Sonny Williams, with camera in tow, getting ready to welcome the crew. Yvonne Wagner and Alexander Gorbanov here in view as well. It'll be the entire Expedition 72.
If it's, let's see, Australia, 4 p.m. almost, you may be able to see it because it will get a reflection from the sun. So you may see a bright, shining star flying by. Yeah, it's about to be 4 o'clock in Sydney. Yeah, so right now it's about just east of central Australia. So Sydney, you guys are on the eastern coast. You would have to look right now. You'd have to look to your west, a little bit north. Oh yeah, if it's cloudy, then yeah, you're definitely not gonna see it. I wonder, did she have gray hair before she left, or did all all that happen in space? Just wondering. And it'd be nice to hear what they're saying, right? Let's see. I might have to have a little ambient background music. Not Livia Soprano, not the Thank You, not the Bullshit Kid, not Robert De Niro, not Roy. I'm gonna keep it that low. It's almost almost off, but once it gets closer to when they're going to open up the ports, then we'll just kill the music and listen to the communications. Look for the videos where they film in an aquarium to produce these videos. Well, she don't look wet to me, and I do mean that respectfully. She doesn't look like she's wet, and neither did the other guys. I don't see bubbles. I wonder what food they're going to want. Like, if you were up in space for that long, away from... Yeah, she's having fun. Yeah, in water, you're not going to continue to spin like that. In space, you can make yourself spin, and you can virtually spin until you're stopped. Until someone stops you, or until you stop yourself somehow. In water...
Dragon Houston on the big loop. Stand by for hardline audio config.
In water, you're not going to go off spinning like that endlessly.
Dragon copy, standing by.
Yeah, they're breathing right now. They're in shot. Yeah, tell me he's wet. With an iPad strapped to his leg. Uh-huh. Where's the bubbles? You know what? That's ridiculous. Having my beverage. All right, where's the space station? The space station is already off the continent of Australia to the northeast. I'm going to say it's just past Cairns in Queensland. It's already past that, out in the water, over the water. Probably already over the Solomon Islands. See, I think they're going off camera because they got other stuff to do than to just stay and entertain people on camera. Where's the bubbles? Where there's water, there's bubbles. Hey, Stephanie. I don't know. I think they were. I think motion sickness is something definitely that they train for, and even if they can't get over, I mean, if you, yeah.
Houston on the big loop for Butch, you are go in step 3.1.
if you've got motion sickness, I don't think you'd be qualified as an astronaut. Especially if
Houston on the big loop, comm check, hardline audio config.
Especially if all the training and whatever medication they gave you, you still couldn't get over it, then you would not. I imagine you wouldn't be a good candidate for a astronaut.
Loud and clear. Talk.
One's complete.
Houston copies.
I'll just wait for your go at 3.2.
Where's the bubbles? Show me bubbles. Everything there you see is fastened or tied down so it won't float. I don't even know why I'm arguing with you. Rock girl, originally from Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, moved to Texas a number of years ago. Well, the ambassador to what? I don't know. It's been a pleasure, but yeah, I'm not going to be responding to your what I consider silliness anymore. But feel free to keep, expressing yourself. As long as you're not insulting anybody, you're okay. Oh, thank. Really? You still hear it? I was wondering if people could tell. They either say they're either like Chicago or Boston.
Station Houston on the big loop. Butch, you are go in step 3.2.
3.2.
I don't know. Some people will have you believe that this is all underwater in a studio somewhere, and that they're floating around underwater. You still haven't answered me. Where are the bubbles? Oh yeah, and cameras do well underwater too.
Houston, 3.3 was 5:03 on the time, and we're waiting our 5 minutes.
So the estimated time for those doors to open and the exchange to happen is going to be about 36 minutes away, 37 minutes away. Oh yeah. Chris Griffin, the ambassador that profiled, commenting here, they're saying this is all fake. Everybody say cheese. Oh look, they're talking. How do you speak without any bubbles coming out of your body? And guess what? If you've ever been underwater, ambassador, you can't move around like that. I mean, look at her. Head going back and forth, up and down, quickly. You can't move like that underwater. I don't know why I keep arguing with you. It's just, I don't know.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're getting a live view inside the International Space Station. Expedition 72 crew members gathering inside No2, smiles across the board, waiting in anticipation for welcoming the crew aboard the International Space Station.
They must be getting closer because they all decided to come into that compartment there. Ambassador, you are looking for deception, so enjoy yourself.
So what the crew is doing right now is, of course, on the timeline, really is the welcome of Crew 10 to the International Space Station. Now, in the back end there of the pressurized mating adapter, you can see the hatch. There's sort of center of your view. This is where we're going to see Crew 10 being welcomed. The hatch on the far end there is called the A-Pass hatch. This is on the station side. That one, they're still waiting for a go.
Yeah, this is the last thing I'm going to say. Did you see her spinning the camera around and the camera just spinning and spinning and spinning? You can't do that in water. There's resistance. The minute she removes her hand from the camera, that camera is going to stop. It's not just going to spin freely. Water is resistance, so it's not going to spin freely like that. So, okay. Now, that's the last thing I'm going to say to that person. Okay.
Up to the same pressure that's inside the International Space Station. That's 14.7 psi. We should be expecting NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore.
Welcome back, Cindy.
Tasked with hatch opening procedures to go through.
5 minutes, we're going to open the hatch.
Houston copies.
And there you have it. Butch Wilmore saying 5 minutes, he's going to open the hatch. There he goes, floating through the pressurized mating adapter, working on hatch opening procedures now. Expecting, he already reported down to Houston, responding here in the room. Capcom, Tess Caswell. We should expect that to be open in 5 minutes. So the vestibule is pressurized.
And if it was water, her hair would be wading around in the water.
To see through,
but it's not.
Hatch to the Dragon hatch.
When she stays still, it's just there.
It's the Dragon hatch because this hatch, of course, will be opened. But the Dragon hatch has a window at the center of the hatch. We may be able to see small views of the Crew 10 astronauts poking their head through, maybe a couple of waves. Of course, it's pretty crowded now. Some excited Expedition 72 astronauts and cosmonauts awaiting the Crew 10's arrival.
This is so freaking cool.
Wilmore now working through those procedures now. You can see he's wearing gloves and inspecting the area for any debris. This is a very carefully choreographed set of procedures that he's undergoing right now. Yvonne Wagner and Sonny Williams photographing.
What happened with the moon landing? You want there are people that want you to have doubt. So they started recreating the moon landing to make it look fake. That's what I believe happened. For some reason, you've got those conspiracy people that want you to believe things are fake, not all this stuff is real. Kind of like all the money that they're finding, that wasteful money that they're finding. People want you to believe that's fake too. Any logical, normal human being is going to look at this and go, there's no water in there. They're not in water. Nobody's wet. There's no bubbles. Look at the hair. Things don't just spin around infinitely. She can spin that camera around. It'll spin forever until it's stopped. You can't do that in water. All right, I think I'm gonna let the music kill the music, not bring it back, because I think they're gonna be meeting up here real soon. What the hell? Oh, taking pictures. Saw the flash. I was like, what the heck? I got a message from somebody who was viewing a message to Ambassador. They said, your skepticism doesn't make it untrue. Very well said.
Houston on 2. Seals look good, no condensation.
Houston copies.
Station hatch is now open.
Here we go.
And Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground for crew status.
Yeah, I can imagine how those two guys, the guy and the gal that had been up there for 9 months, it's like they can finally see daylight at the end of their space tunnel to get back home.
Kids Vapor on Dragon to ground. Go ahead.
Hey, Vapor. Just wanted to check in since I see Butch and Nick are moving pretty close through the vestibule pressurization and those tasks there. So just wanted to get a status on your guys from inventory report. And I see about 20 minutes on suit drying and just wanted to check in.
Yep, we're tracking about 20 minutes on suit drying as well. You've got 1.5 of us changed, and then the other 2 are doing the inventory and packing right now, and we'll get you the water and feed inventory soon.
Okay, SpaceX copies all.
So as a readback, you can hear the crew inside Dragon speaking with the core that's over at SpaceX's Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. The crew on the other side of the Dragon hatch does have some procedures to go through. You heard they have some time on the suit drying, and then they have additional procedures ahead of them before they open up their hatch.
Samuel, yeah, there's actually a lot of space junk still floating around from God knows when. That stuff is still floating around space. There's a lot of space junk out there. These ships, vessels, stations get hit with a lot of that stuff a lot of the times. It'd be nice to have the view from the Dragon capsule to see what they're doing on their side. Michael says maybe they'll find Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails floating around space. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she incinerated those with a microwave oven or some kind of sophisticated high heat source to make sure they evaporated. Whoa. Excuse me. Ramon Valdez. They said that it could be up to 30 days before they actually disconnect and head back home. It's going to take a number of days for the crew that just arrived there to get settled into space. And then I'm sure there's some time needed for debriefing back and forth. And then they have to make the plans. So everything is, they say it could be, up to 30 days. And I know people who want to drive the, they're in an underwater tank. That's why they're floating around. Could look at their faces. I think, yeah, their faces are like that because there's no freaking gravity. Things happen to your body differently when there's no gravity pulling your skin down. Samuel, thank you so much for stopping by.
Dragon SpaceX on Dragon to ground.
Carrillo, I've got you 5x5 on Dragon to ground, and I am ready to copy the inventory report.
Look at all that hair.
Yes, you're right. That's what I'm calling for. So we had water from station 11 and 12 from 202. We had 5 bottles. Them for 203, 5 bottles. For back 204, 4 bottles.
Okay, I copy bag 202 and 203 were 5 bottles each, and 204 was 4 bottles.
Affirm. Now let's go through food consumption.
Alice, let me look that up. That's a good question.
All our supplies for the day 1. So bags 301, 302, 303, 304 are empty.
I copy. 301 through 304 are all empty.
Affirm.
Oh, I heard knocking. The longest continuous time spent at the ISS by a single person is 371 days. This was by NASA astronaut Frank Rubio. Holy crap. Over a year. Just over a year. That was back in 2009. And Peggy Whitson,
In Houston, we're up to step 4.9.
she has been in space for
Dragon hatch equalization.
She's got the record for the longest, as most days in space.
Houston copies.
665 days. Not all at once, but, accumulative. Not accumulative, cumulative, yeah. You see how this guy's got, what do you call those, carabiners? on his pants belt loops. That's so they can lock themselves in if they have to be somewhere for a while and they don't need to hold themselves. Yeah, Alice, I believe right now it's 9 months, and by the time they head back, yeah, it'll get into the 10th month. Alien mask? I don't know, but I'd freak out if I saw the alien predator monster come out of there. Imagine seeing that little alien monster, little baby one crawling around. Yeah, Vicky, I'm sure these are the cameras are specially custom made, super
This is
high.
Mission Control Houston, continuing to work through the hatch opening procedures.
I'm sure they're very, very custom made cameras with the highest resolution.
Outside of some of the channels that we patched through, that's part of the Big Loop communications. You could hear Sonny Williams and Don Pettit use a microphone to set up for the welcome ceremony that will be occurring shortly after Dragon hatch is opened. Once again, the 8-pass hatch is opened. You can see the crew in the back has been configuring the hatch. Once it's opened, they scan the area for any FOD or foreign object debris, and they photograph some of the area. That was some of the flashes you were seeing. Those images are downlinked to teams here on the ground, engineers that analyze and make sure that everything's safe. As precautionary measures, they detach the docking target. That's an extended pole that sticks out from the center of the 8-pass hatch on the other side. That was used as literally the target that we saw as Dragon was approaching the forward hatch. So that was removed. The hatch itself is covered with some fabric. All of these safety measures to protect the crew as they ingress.
Yeah, it would have been epic if somebody actually. I didn't know that that's what the alien monster was called. Xenomorph. Can you imagine one of these guys dress up in a xenomorph suit to greet? Yeah, I would crap in my pants right on the spot. I would.
Focused on ensuring that hatch opening procedures are underway. They go through those step-by-step written procedures that have been directed and sent up to them from the ground to make sure they're doing everything safely. The same thing is happening on the Dragon side. The teams in Hawthorne, SpaceX teams, are walking the Dragon crew through their closeout procedures. They have to dry their suits. They have to change into their garments that they'll wear for the welcome ceremony, similar to, polos and attire that you see here. We'll see the Dragon crew wearing, ideally, something similar, and they'll.
Dragon on the Big Loop.
They're gang stalking from space.
Hey, can you open your cover to the hatch window cover?
Stand by. Give us about 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
The excitement in the International Space Station is real. Sonny Williams. Over the Big Loop, again, the Big Loop configures the audio channels such that the crew inside the station can communicate directly with the crew inside Dragon. At the same time, those audio loops are patched through to control centers here in Houston, as well as the SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. Everybody can talk on this loop. Sonny Williams, of course, eager to greet Crew 10 and welcome them aboard.
Yeah, I believe they actually docked about an hour and 20 minutes ago, something like that, just roughly. That's when they actually docked.
There's a little window that they can see through. Expedition 72 very eager to see 4 new crewmates and welcome them to the Expedition 72. When they enter and start their formal welcome ceremony, we will see all Expedition 72 astronauts and cosmonauts in this view that you're seeing right now. There will be 11 crew members aboard the International Space Station.
Man, just think about it. It's got to be freaking comfortable to sleep. It's like you're literally sleeping on air. No cushion underneath you, no resistance, no nothing. Like you're just literally floating. That's got to be good sleep. It's got to be. You can imagine the phone ringing inside the space station, and they pick it up, and it's Vanessa on the line. Can you send a patrol spaceship, please, over my house? I believe there's a drone flying around. So, according to what he said before, this guy who's narrating all this, that hatch that's open right there, way at the end, that's on the Dragon side. And they must have another hatch. I'm sure there's a series of hatches because of the vacuum of space. Alice, yeah, that's a good question, right? You mean like that that happens when you are slipping into sleep paralysis to help you sleep, but for some reason you come out of it and your body realizes it and you jump because it's fucking scary. I wonder if that happens up there. Yeah, it's. Oh yeah, he's got the alien mask. There he is. Look. Or is that an alien? Wait a minute. There you go. Okay. That's freaking hilarious. Let me do this because it's going to be a few minutes, right? So once again, real quick, if you did not hear, for the crew that's arriving, it's going to take them a number of days to adjust to space and for their bodies to adjust and everything. And then there will be a series of briefings.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're getting a live view from inside the International Space Station. Now, we get these incremental handover periods as the International Space Station orbits 17,500 miles per hour over the Earth. They are communicating with several geosynchronous satellites that are positioned also around the Earth and have to point the antenna in a certain way. So these handovers are anticipated as we hand over from satellite to satellite. Nick Hague and many of the other astronauts, of course, working through, eagerly awaiting to greet the Crew 10 astronauts. You saw the mask that Hague was donning. That is still Hague. He and the other crew members are working through the procedures. Though they are quite excited, you can hear the tone of the crew on board.
Go ahead on the big loop.
Okay, we are complete through section 5 of 4.400 and ready for hatch equalization. And then for 4.012, we're tracking 42 minutes of suit dry time in section 5.
And copy, Dragon, standby 1.
Yeah, so who's the other guy that's doing the space thing? Is it Branson or I mean both of them, right? Branson or Jeff Bezos, where they're Katy Perry's going up to space, and who else? Some other celebrities. But to me, that's not really. I mean, it's going up to space, but all they're doing is dipping up into space and then coming back down. So they'll have a moment of weightlessness for a little bit, and yes, it's way up there, and they can see space and Earth from up there. I think that's got to be amazing.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. At this time, you guys are go for hatch opening per decal, followed by your
I just don't see that as the same thing. Okay, here we go. Sounds like they're about ready.
Dragon copy, go for Dragon forward hatch and then remaining steps in section 6.
Good readback.
So you heard that call on the big loop. Crew inside Endurance is getting ready to open up that hatch. Of course, the crew Expedition 72 crew has gone through their procedures to safely open up the hatch. You saw a couple of photographs. You see in frame there on the bottom left, Yvonne Wagner doing some closeout photography, as well as a few of the other Expedition 72 crew. Now it's up to the Crew 10 cadre to open up the Dragon hatch. Once that hatch is open, all hatches between the two spacecraft will be open and Crew 10 will be able to float through. Now, oftentimes, there has been a gap in time from when the Dragon hatch is open to when we actually see the crew float through. It will be at the crew's discretion and the timeline that they have with the Hawthorne teams on some of the closeout procedures that are necessary inside the Dragon cabin before they can say yea verily that they can float through and be welcomed, start the ceremony. So we'll just stand by, listen in, see how they're doing, and follow along. We're continuing our nonstop coverage of Crew 10's arrival aboard the International Space Station ahead of a formal welcome ceremony as Crew 10 joins Expedition 72.
Should be opening up and coming through any second now. Dirt cheap, right? Ring a bell or you're going to hear like a knocking sound. There they are.
Dragon hatch is open.
Oh, it's open.
SpaceX copies, hatch open at 0535 UTC.
And there it is, confirmation that the Dragon hatch is open. That time of hatch opening is 12:35 a.m. Central Time on March 16th, 2025.
Lewis, nothing. You're very welcome. LED dispenser. I got no reason to believe that this is not real. Someone else was in here a little while ago trying to convince everybody that the Earth was flat. And that this was all underwater. Yeah, so I know, right? That doorbell went out. It was perfect. It was perfect. John Ross, happy birthday, my friend. Thank you for being here. Happy birthday, John Ross. Oh, Michael Knight. That'd be so funny if they come through with like a DoorDash bag or something. Or a McDonald's bag or whatever, Burger King. Bring some fast food. The best stuff to take would be McDonald's because, it's not real food and it would survive a trip to space and back. And it would still look the same.
Some dragon on the big loop.
Go ahead, talk.
We are in step 6.1 of the procedure 2.102 Crew Dragon ISS. And IMV, that's installation complete, and you guys go for IMV fan activation.
Yes, Pixel, I have heard that. Because if they don't, their muscle mass would just deteriorate and disappear. And that's one question I had earlier was I wonder what's going to happen.
And Houston Dragon, do we have a go for YO cartridge config?
I was going to say, the space has an effect of their bodies, after a couple of weeks in space. But what the heck is, 9-10 months in space going to do? How, what kind of shape is their body in, and what will happen after that much time in weightlessness? Well, what happened to the other guy? I'd have to look it up. The guy that was there for 300 and whatever days, just over a year.
Standing by for words from Expedition 72. You see the bell in position that will be rung. Audio will be streamed down of the bell welcoming the crew. More Expedition 72 members coming through.
Houston, you are go in step 6.3.
We go for step 6.3.
Yo, Hammer Edge, welcome. I hear you, man. I hear you. Shrinking of the heart, also. It's got to be a struggle once they come back, and I wonder if they can even. I mean, I don't know. Can they even get themselves out of the seat and unfasten themselves so they can get rescued? Got to remember my camera's on. I almost picked my nose there for a minute.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Be advised that S-band will be deactivated shortly. Dragon to ground will no longer be available for comm.
They've been up there coming up on 9 months already. Only two of them. They've been up there for 9 months.
Dragon copy.
They were supposed to be up there for around 8 days. This is the feed from inside the ISS. So what you see way out there in the distance, that's the SpaceX Dragon. Yeah. Pick you a winner. You know, they say
Dragon on the big loop for LIO.
Go ahead for LIO.
LIO cartridge is sealed and installed. LIO cartridge 1 is now in active slot with the sealed.
We copy. LIO cartridge 1 is sealed and installed in the active slot at approximately 0542 UTC.
That's good copy.
Crew 10 mission specialist Takuya Onishi confirming some of the closeout procedures. There is a reason why we are waiting for Crew 10 to enter the International Space Station. They do have very important closeout duties inside Endurance. Those lithium hydroxide canisters are consumable carbon dioxide scrubbers inside the cabin of Dragon. So they do want to conserve those carbon dioxide scrubbers, and so before entering the International Space Station, they do want to make sure they conserve the LIO cartridges as much as possible. So that is a very important closeout duty that they have aboard Dragon before they enter. But it seems like we do have the first Crew 10.
here we go. That's freaking
Onishi,
awesome.
the first Crew 10 astronaut through the hatch, followed by Peskov. Nicole Ayers, the first of the Fly's newest class of astronauts to enter, and last commander of Crew 10, Anne McLean.
Dang, we got a party now. Oh yeah, Tony Stewart. I heard about that. There was some kind of change to his DNA. Freaking fascinating. I want to hear them, what they got to say. They're going to say, "What took you so long?" I mean, once you figure it out, it's got to be fun just floating around. It's got to be. Come on, guys. Somebody say something.
SpaceX Crew 10, welcome aboard the ISS.
Somebody push the button on the mic.
Well, hey, everybody down there on Earth.
You're not hot on the mic.
He's got it.
I know. Is the receiver?
Oh, yeah, we're on.
Okay, got it. Okay.
All right,
They changed at the last minute.
Got it.
thought I lost my touch there for a sec. Hey, Crew 10 has had a great journey up here, about 28 hours to get back up to the space station, and I cannot tell you the immense joy of our crew when we looked out the window and we saw the space station for the first time. Returning for a couple of people, very first time for a couple of people. And let me tell you, that is such an amazing journey. You can hardly even put it into words. The ride up on the Falcon 9, orbiting the Earth for the last couple of days, it's been absolutely incredible, and it is something that none of us could do by ourselves. As we've said before, you cannot be great without the greatness of others, and I tell you, the greatness of the ground control teams have really shined through in the last few days getting us up here safely. Thank you very, very much.
That is an accomplishment. It is.
Hey, from the bottom of my heart, thanks to our families, friends, and our colleagues from all the partners, SpaceX, NASA, CSA,
He's from
ESA,
China.
Roscosmos, and JAXA for preparing us and making it possible for us to get here. And we are so excited to now be officially part of the Expedition 72. Thank you guys. And I want to say a couple of words in Japanese from here. 日本の皆さん応援ありがとうございました。
Oh, Japan,
元気に
sorry.
ここまで ISS まで帰ってくることができました。明日からまた、一生懸命、希望でのサイエンスと含めていろんなタスクを頑張っていきたいと思います。ぜひ応援よろしくお願いします。
So that was obviously Japanese, not Chinese. My mistake.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot one more time to SpaceX and NASA for this wonderful ride. That was really fun. And thanks to all the world's aerospace industry, which works to make the dreams to come true and to take us further and further. That's really wonderful. Thanks to everyone working there. И спасибо, конечно же, отдельно это Роскосмосу и Центру подготовки космонавтов за знания и опыт.
I just think it's so cool that so many different countries are represented. Fucking fascinating.
Передаю микрофон.
Потерялся. I'd like to just say again, thank you to SpaceX for the awesome ride up here. As a rookie, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, and I can't wait to get to work up here. So So excited for the 4 pilots and us that just got to space together, and now we're 4 astronauts together. So thank you to all of our friends and families, and thank you to all of the instructors and all of the ground teams who got us here. Can't wait to get started.
And Houston, thank you for tuning in this early morning. It was a wonderful day. Great to see our friends arrive. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear from is those 2 that have been there for 9 months.
Thanks to all participants. Station, we're now resuming operational audio comm.
So now begins. I mean, I'm curious about the basic stuff. Like, are they hungry? Do they eat? When's the last time they ate? Are they thirsty? Do they have to eat like space meals, right? Specially made meals. Like they can't. I wonder if somebody brought like a bag of Burger King or something like that, or Chick-fil-A or whatever. Or if they brought any snacks, excuse me, from Earth. And just stuff like that. Super cool. I'm glad you guys were here to witness that, and something I believe to be very special. It's not something you see every day, and even though it may happen, not everybody gets to be in a place where they could actually watch to see what's happening. And see, if NASA not going to have anything else, then that will end this feed. Let's see. Give it a couple of minutes to see. Oh, where's the space station right now? It's gone back full circle already. Right now, it's in between South America and Africa. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, right. Like, I guess it's pretty much in the South Atlantic Ocean, and it'll be passing the southern tip of Africa once again, like it did a little bit ago. So the next time it comes down, it's gonna. If you're anywhere from Washington State, Vancouver, maybe, and it's gonna cut southeast across the country, almost literally right to Florida, headed south. So in that, I guess around by the next hour, it'll be cutting through North America, and you should be able to see it. If you got clear sky, look up and it's dark, you should be able to see the space station flying by you. So that's pretty cool as well. I put the link in the comments a little while ago to that page. It's called spotthespacestation.nasa.gov. Spotthespacestation.nasa.gov, G-O-V. And then you go to where it says tracking map. Pretty cool, actually. All right. Yeah, definitely super cool. I'm glad I got to see it. I'm glad I was fortunate enough, and I'm glad you guys saw it too. I'm glad I decided to. Because I had forgotten. I thought it was Thursday night. It was last night. And so it took them about 28 hours, they said, from launch to being just a few meters away from the ISS. 28 hours, pretty. You wonder, did they sleep at all? I guess at some point, once you're in cruise and you get up to orbit, and nothing's going to happen for at least 27 hours or whatever. I guess at some point everybody's taking a snooze or whatever. It's little things like that. That's what I would ask. What did you do? Did you take a nap? What did you eat for dinner? What did you eat up there in your while you were waiting for the 28 hours? So we'll see. We'll see what comes up the next few days. Hey, listen, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the great conversation in the comments. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night. Don't forget to like the page, please. I appreciate it. The Cash Apps, thank you very much. I do appreciate your support.
We did hear the welcome ceremony. We saw all 11 crew members of Expedition 72 very happy and excited to be aboard. It'll be they'll now go into right now is what they're scheduled to do is just have some time to chat with each other before a formal safety briefing, just getting to know a refresher really of the safety procedures aboard the International Space Station before they transition into some work, including transferring some cargo before heading right to sleep for the Crew 10 crew. There's going to be some shifting involved and a handover period before Crew 9 undocks, and we'll expect more information on that timeline very soon. But for now, we do have all 4 crew members of Crew 10 on board the International Space Station. That includes Commander Ann McLean, pilot Nicole Ayers, both from NASA, and mission specialist Takuya Onishi from JAXA, and Kirill Peskov from Roscosmos. All 4 crew members join Expedition 72, now 11 crew members on board. After the welcome ceremony and the work done by the teams here in Mission Control Houston, the live view from what you're seeing, will now wrap up our coverage of the approach and docking of Crew 10 to the International Space Station.
All right. There we go. End the feed. Thank you all so much. Have a great night. And I'll be back with you guys tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.